Recording.
All right, so this is the executive committee meeting of CSS Workforce New York, November 5, 2020, 8 a.m. Present on the board, we do have quorum. We have Jack Wheeler, we have Ernie Hartman, we have Jim Griffin, we have Mike Mishhook, and we have Tim Driscoll. Also, as a guest of the board, or another board member as a guest of the meeting, is Jeannie Eschbach. Staff on the call are myself, Dan Porter, Phyllis Bellier, and Lisa Johnson. So with quorum, Jack, the meeting is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. We have our role, conflict of interest disclosure. As always, if an item comes up that you or your organization have a conflict, please note that and abstain. Meeting minutes from last month.
So the meeting. Yep. Just so everybody knows, we actually, because of the timing and overlap and stuff, these minutes were sent to the board as a report. So the board has accepted them as your official report. You're actually just confirming the minutes right now themselves for your meeting.
Because we don't have a certificate saying we have insurance or security and fire.
You gotta love process. So here we go. Could we get a motion to accept those minutes, please?
Motion made. Second.
Okay, everyone, motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carried. I'm getting kids on the bus, so go ahead.
All right. So at the board chair report, so the September 2020 budget was approved, and I went over it in depth at the October 22nd board meeting. So I didn't put it here for us to rehash again. I think the board has approved it, so I think we accidentally left that red asterisk on here. You guys don't need to approve it. There are really three other things to talk about today. I guess what I'll start with is the ETPL updates. We have one update request. It is by Corning Community College. It is, as you can see on the screen, an RN refresher. This will take quite a bit of time, more than a year. You can see the total projected cost for tuition, classrooms, lab, etc. So the total maximum cost that we would be paying is kind of outlined on here. The reality for us is because this is a Corning Community accredited program, this is one of those examples where, if you remember in the board meeting, I mentioned that even though we commit a lot of money, Ernie's team does on the front end in the review, once we get the FAFSAs and all the financial aid processed on the CCC courses, we rarely pay full ride on those. Between Pell and TAP and everything else, they take a good discount. That's kind of background. So bottom line, the course is aligned with our demand occupation. It would be aligned, and we'll have this conversation some more on our demand occupation. This is technically aligns with our right here, registered nurses. And you can see the codes and things around that. As far as the dollar amounts associated with that, it would be a level 3, which means technically speaking, they could, if they needed to finish their RN, we could support up to $8,000 to $4,000 batch tuitions, which exceeds what the college charges. Plus ample supportive services are available to support as well. Again, in excess of what certainly would be requested or needed of a person going to Corning Community College. So SUNY school, we really have very little grounds to say no on this, but know that it is assured and it is aligned. Be assured that it's aligned with our demand occupation, and staff recommendation is to certainly approve this and see if we can increase this pipeline of folks.
I move we approve.
Okay.
Motion second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Great. Excellent. Let's do the contract written values, business services, and then we'll make demand occupation kind of the longer conversation today. So this is our business service. This is an update of where we're at. PY20 contract written value. Again, these are what we're proposing at the front end. We do reconcile at the end. So oftentimes we will start with a $2,000 amount, say, and it might come in at $1,942 or something. That's part of the reconciliation. But this gives you an idea of, this is our OJTs. We're actually doing pretty well on this. What I don't want to say I'm excited about, because that might sound in bad taste. We are seeing, the reality is we're seeing more right here of dislocated workers. If you compare this report to reports, say, a year ago, you'll notice that they were all almost exclusively adult. It was very, very hard to find individuals who were in that dislocated category. We are beginning to see that flow. That will help us spend out our dollars and be a little easier on the transfers and things internally. And that is really the only silver lining to kind of saying this at all, is that it mathematically and from a bureaucracy perspective, having enough DWs to spend off that pool of money is helpful. But we're seeing a lot of hiring, a lot of pickups on that front. Customized trainings, we're actually still seeing a really nice flow on customized trainings across a bunch of different companies and some other different categories. So you can see the amounts. We've had a couple either put on hold or canceled because of changes in staffing patterns in some of the companies. So some of the people they were planning to train didn't stick around, or the division had to be downsized, or whatever the case may be. So those are marked in red on there. But we are still continuing to get a good mix of companies, as well as some really creative ways. If you look under topics, some pretty creative ways that people are using our training services. So on a business services front, we are still on pace. We are entering traditionally the slow period of customized trainings. Once the holiday seasons and until after the first of the year, most businesses really focus. And I'll just speak broadly. It's end of the year closeout. It's budgets are exhausted. It's inventory time. We got to get that done for accounting so that we can close out our books, and nobody really has time to do internal training. So while we have written about 123, and that seems a little bit heavy for this time of year, it's okay in our minds, because we got about 2.5, 3 months of really slow period here. So it'll catch up, and the timing will play out nice. So that's the business services report. I don't know if the team has any questions or thoughts or anything.
Dan, how about
Yeah.
do we track the OJTs as to how many of them complete and go on to unsubsidized, and then how far out do we check to see if they're still working?
So that's a little bit of a layered answer. So yes, we do track them. So how our OJT program is set up is there's no partial. So if someone only goes through half of their training and they don't succeed in the training, then the training itself is canceled, and we actually have no skin in the game on that front. So we would not pay it out. So we are tracking that, and at the very least, it is caught at closeout time. But we're usually in pretty good communication with our business partners on this front. So we do track along that way. So we know that if we pay it, it's been successful in terms of success as far as the training goes, or progression through that point. At that point, we really kind of back off locally and allow kind of the WIOA tracking to happen. So WIOA performance, once a person is hired, they go into the quarterly downloads for our WIOA performance measures. And they are measured again at 2 months after exit and 4 months, or no, 2 quarters after exit, sorry. So 6 months, and then 4 quarters, a year afterwards, to see if they're still attached to the workforce.
Wow, okay.
It doesn't necessarily mean it's at that employer. Sometimes somebody will get trained really, really well with Mike and company at TTA, and then Alstom will scoop them up.
Yeah.
That's the nature of the business world. But we do track that way.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. I mean, we could add some additional layers probably and do some follow-up, but
you don't need that.
Any other questions on the business services? It would be helpful to have approval to submit this as part of the report to the board at our next board meeting.
Griffin, motion to approve. Go ahead.
So moved.
Motion second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried.
So I accidentally closed out my thing here. Oh no, I didn't. I just opened up another one. Sometimes you got to be smarter than the technology here. Screen 2. Yep, there we go. So the last conversation was really driven by the board meeting around the barber and cosmetology schools. So I just wanted to have some conversation around how to move forward on this. So we've got the hiatus on there until the board can revisit and dig into the data on this. So just as a one step backwards, so not too long ago, we did rejigger our local demand occupation training list. And so we really grouped it by really the ONET code. So you see it on the screen, the ONET code here. And then ONET recognizes any number of job titles. This really was kind of a way for us to tidy up and clean up all of the OSOS tracking on it, but also maybe even open up, because if I put on my demand occupation list, I was looking for a certified nurse aide, but the position being hired was a licensed nursing assistant. And technically, I would struggle to train that person, even though they're the exact same position by and large. So this really was a way for us to clean up our internal tracking and reporting and making sure that these ONET codes are done consistently throughout. It was a way to kind of get to the broader skill set versus a skill set versus, you know, any particular job title. And I will tell you, from that perspective, purely the bureaucratic cleaning up, opening up type of perspective, I want to say that this really was pretty successful. And you know, I would kind of default maybe to Ernie and Phyllis to kind of weigh in and some more on that. But I think the fact that the counselors were not focused on trying to find a job title, but were trying to train for a skill set, I think was a little bit liberating for them. Where the challenge became was that in all of these things, we have added and or carried over different things along the way. So we had added barbershops and cosmetology, and so this kind of became that category. At the time period we were adding this, let me step back a little smidge of history. So CSS has over many, I've been involved with CSS now since a long time in 2 different times. And there was always a push and pull on the cosmetology, bartending, nail tech type of things. Folks that go into this field and they are successful make really good money, and there is a fair amount of demand out there for it. So there's always been some pressure to kind of open that up. The reality, however, is that a lot of these folks end up being self-employed, which is problematic for WIOA. Kind of going to Jim Griffin's earlier question around tracking outcomes and things. So if we train a person to be a cosmetologist, and at the end of that time, he decides he's going to go open up his own hair salon, he disappears from the record. So we actually don't get credit in the Q4 and the Q2 WIO outcomes. We lose them. So we actually, it looks like we failed in our mission. So there's been a lot of push and pull around the cosmetology. A couple of years ago, it was added back in. We had abundance of monies. There was no issue around it. We were going. In that progression, you had a group in Elmira open up a, I want to make sure they don't show somewhere else down here. Yeah. So you had a group open up another training school in downtown Elmira, Elmira Beauty. And they spent a lot of time jiggering and aligning their internal systems and referral processes to basically feed their program into our funding stream. And the effect of that is that we've seen a lot of people. We have a whole cohort of people at this point who have gone into that. So we have a very sizable amount of money going into this. And there's nothing wrong with how this played out from nothing's illegal. There was no wrong. There was no ill intent or anything along the line. They were doing exactly what a training provider should do and what we encourage all of our training providers to do. It's just the result is in these times, we've put a tremendous amount of money, at least percentage of our budget, into supporting this. And so there was a very quick move at the board meeting. I was surprised how quick. I wasn't planning any of that. So we've to put a hiatus on it. And so the conversation now is, do we as a board want to continue funding this particular career cluster and this thing, or do we want to back off on it, or do we want to look at other ways to kind of continue to do it, but at a lower level or what. So I guess I'd love to hear the opinions, and then maybe we can respond from there.
Any thoughts from the group?
So Dan, this may be a little helpful, some updated information on that. Since the board meeting, we've gotten several requests for individuals for funding in this program. So the requests are still coming, and several requests. So
One thing from the BOCES standpoint is we get some youth that graduate from high school and lack hours. So they come to adult ed and are looking to go through the youth program and get funded to do a module to finish up their hours so they can become employed. We usually have it lined right up where they're able to get employed, and so it meets all the requirements and will show up good on our end as well as workforce's end. We don't typically, I mean, we refer people all the time that come through for any of our programs, and cosmetology be no different. However, a lot of what we do in these scenarios is the catching up with the high school kids that need to finish and complete and need a little bit of funding to help, not the whole program, but just a small amount. And I would, encourage that we could probably keep that if at all possible. I understand not wanting to fund a whole $8,000 or $9,000 program that's been around a long time, and I know how it goes. And part of the reason we put it on in the first place years ago was because we had some grant money we were pulling down from the state, and it just needed to be on the demand occupation. And I said right at the meeting, I wasn't looking for us to fund the full ride for people. I was looking for just to be on the demand occupation so that we could pull down state monies and federal monies for training. So, but the one thing I didn't want to lose sight of is the youth that just need to make up a small amount of hours to complete and get a certificate and become employable.
Good.
Thank you, Tim, for bringing that. There's layers to this. There is that direct pipeline of young people, and we've seen that in the youth program. There are really some good people who and there are salons that hire direct hires, and they end up being good performance outcomes and whatnot. And there's part of me that really struggles with the concept of me helping someone start their own small business and be very successful being a negative outcome. I mentally, I struggle. I understand that the regular to this to consider. So, Jackie,
Yeah, and
raising her hand. I don't know if you want to call her.
what's that?
Jeannie's got her hand raised. I don't know if you want to give her
yeah.
freedom to kind of speak, or if you want her to raise her hand as a guest to the meeting. I'll let you decide.
Jeannie, since I can see the nice hand emoji, please feel free to proceed.
Thank you. I was just so I guess I wanted to pull back and just say kind of philosophically about how we look at careers with this. And I did pull up the New York State Department of Labor employment projections, and the employment projections are strong for this field.
Right.
So, I think we have to be really careful as a board, and I'm speaking here as a board member, not as another educational provider, but as a board, I think we have to be really, really careful about how do we, if we're going to be fair and equitable about looking at careers. But I think Dan's point about how many folks are self-employed, because I know that, I'll speak personally now, but at my hairdresser, everybody's an independent contractor. Mm-hmm. So, the person I go to is the owner, but she only hires independent contractors. So they're really all self-employed. And I think that tends to be the majority of the way that it goes. And so if that's an issue for performance outcomes for the board, then, for CSS, it sounds like it is. That's certainly another whole layer that we need to take into consideration. So, I just think we do need to be careful about that. I know it seems really high to me when from an educational provider standpoint, it's $8,000 that's almost 2 years of tuition at Corning, for a certificate program with no credits behind it. So it seems like a lot, but that's a different conversation, I think.
Yeah, and I guess from my perspective, I mean, kind of the global picture, I would kind of agree. I mean, we have to walk a fine line. I mean, we want to get people trained in programs that suit them, that give them opportunities, but we also have to balance. I mean, if we saw a real push where we were really down to scraping pennies or making key decisions on this occupation over this occupation on the overall kind of state of our regional economy, then okay, I can see where we would really tighten up in one area. But at least everything that I've seen, we're still in the position of trying to get money out the door. Yes, we have strategic decisions, but we're not lacking for funds at this point for these programs, correct?
We will be. There's a natural flow. So in the fall, the schools are very busy, starting up lots of the training provider schools are very busy, launching the beginning of their semesters and workshops and things of that nature. So we get a very heavy push then. Then there are months when there's no new classes, but then there's another round of classes or the spring session or whatever different providers call them, and then you'll have another push again. So we've been very heavy, and it looks very heavy right now. I will tell you that the situation we find ourselves in right now is that we're going to have to become very, and Phyllis and Ernie are going to kind of get this. We are getting down there in terms of our overall training budget, and while we're not going to say we can't train, we can, but it's going to get much tighter in terms of what funds or which programs have money. So our youth program still has ample funds. So our youth program, basically anybody wants to go into these things, the youth program can support that. I will tell you that as far as our adult/DW programs, we are probably going to be looking at tapping out. We may not be able to support, and we may be in a situation where we don't have funds available for that spring type of push, because by the time frame, I would suspect that budgetarily wise, unless all of our FAFSA funds come in and there's financial aid that kind of replenishes, we're gonna be looking at really hitting the brakes on that front. We've not gotten any new monies from any of the CARES Act or any hint that there's really money coming out of Washington related to COVID stuff. So I would say we got a window of about 2 months or so in which we're probably going to be at it where we don't have, with the exception of very specific programs, a lot of funds.
This is Jim Griffin. I think that Jeannie's comments there about independent contractors is so true, because most of the I don't go to a lot of beauty shops, but obviously, most of them are independent contractors who are working. It's not a full-time job. They're Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 2 to 4 or whatever. So I'm just wondering what the need is. I know in our area we just started another beauty shop opened up yesterday. She had been working with someone else and decided she always wanted to start her own business, and so she just opened the door and said, "I'm a beauty shop and I'm running my own business." Has no business acumen and has 4 women who are what she calls her apprentices. She's going to teach them in her beauty shop. You wonder, wait a minute, how successful can this be? So I'm wondering, between the needs, I don't have any trouble getting a haircut. It only takes them 30 seconds to cut my hair, But I mean, the beauty shop, the barber shop that we have in Hornell wants to work out a training program also. So I don't know. It's a lot of money to be spent on one profession, I believe.
Dan, can we put restrictions specific program without doing similar restrictions to the rest of them?
We have We have quite a bit of ability, to be honest with you, to be creative, as long as we're not, as long as everyone understands that we're singling it out and we're doing our, like, so we're, for instance, the idea of having a 3-level tiered program with different amounts associated, that was revolutionary when we introduced it to the WIA world back in WIA days. So we have some ability to define it. The other side of that is that, okay, thanks, Jeannie. The other side to that is we have to be consistent. So if we say, you know, let's create the mythical level 4. So level 4 programs are kind of the mishmash, or the, you know, demand occupations with specific limitations. And we could say, okay, for this 39-5012, which is cosmetology, aesthetics, nail, blah, blah, blah. This group, they're eligible for supportive services. They're, tuition over this period. You just have to define it, and then all training providers, we have to apply it evenly to all training providers. So the only way, so yes, the short answer is yes, we can define, and we can kind of fine tune how we want to support into dollar amounts and stuff. The only caveat is we can't write it such that, we love, Jim was mentioned, there's a new barbershop in Hornell looking to start a training program. We couldn't design this to benefit them and to the exclusion of the other training providers. So we really have to create a category and say, for this career, this is what we're willing to invest in, how, and then all training providers will have to follow those rules. And as long as we did it in a way that we were trying to be as blind as possible around and making our decisions around monies we have available and what makes sense, and not and being blind to, well, if we do this, then we'll be able to pay for the BOCES program because we love Tim, but we won't be able to do these Elmira people because we hate the Elmira beauty school. Or we have to be very careful around that. And I just think that's ethically, morally, probably even legally the right thing to do, is to be blind and say, this is, as a board, how much money we want to put into this category over how much time under these parameters. And then training providers at that point then can respond on that level playing field.
So you could put an annual cap on it.
Yeah.
We could, yes. Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
What about moving them into on-the-job training programs? I mean, they bring these people in, they want to teach them how to cut hair, they want to cosmetology. I mean, it takes a long time. Why can't they do, if a shop wants to bring someone on, why can't they apply for an on-the-job training program for this person?
They can now, and to be honest with you, we've offered that to shops at different times. Okay, so Jack may need to step away.
Yeah, sorry, I got a STC budget meeting that can't miss. So the brain trust, you don't need me. See everyone later.
So who's your barber,
Jack?
Jack?
Hey, Jack.
So we could, the challenge with, it's not even challenge, just the bureaucratic reality. The bureaucratic reality of an OJT program is that person has to be an employee. The same with a customized training, they have to be an employee. So you'd be in a position where the training provider would have to hire Sue and then train Sue under this, an OJT training contract. Yeah. And some could, so the woman you were talking about having the apprenticeships, her model, if she were willing to put them on her payroll, we could support some of those early weeks of training in those situations. And if we want to move that direction strategically and say we're not going to do this in an ITA format, which is kind of free employment, if you will, we certainly can do that. But I will tell you that that is a major overhaul of how this is trained. The training traditionally happens in this field.
Yeah, I understand that. You're right. Somehow you gotta limit the amount that you're spending. I mean, you can't just say it's because of cosmetology, but you've got to. I think you've got to set some parameters for any part of it. That you don't get way over on any one of them. I mean, that's always been the mantra of OJ. There of our training programs through the CSS has been. We try to make it responsive to what's needed right now in our area, and be flexible enough to do it, but not set up maybe false ceilings where you're saying we're going to spend a lot more money on this than we are on this. You know, it's a balancing act. That's what we got you for, Dan.
Yep.
Well, that was my question, though. You know, say we decide to put a cap on this program, do we have to also cap every other program at some point?
You probably, structurally, to make sure we had a level playing field, we would probably need to say, in order to ensure that we're training across all demand occupations, we're going to establish a cap for them. And so we might have to annually say, or periodically revisit and say, so the cap on preparer occupational ITA training is $0 currently. The cap on pharmacy technician is we'll do up to $20,000 this year. The cap for HVAC would be $50,000 cap this year. The cap for daycare providers might be $100,000 this year, and kind of use those caps as a way to kind of control the flow and try and direct some people. So I would not want to put a cap on one particular thing. I would want to have a cap, and then we adjust and customize the caps across all the occupations. So what you'd have is we're not going to pay any more than X amount for level 1. So what is level 1? I think it's like, is it 750? I can't remember, Phyllis. What is my so 1,800. So so level 1 offers up to $1,800 per person. So, and then what we would say is that within level 1 there is the CNAs, construction, and general automotive. So level 1 training programs, the individual caps are $1,800 tuition. However, looking at the CNA within this category, we would not want to do more than, I'm just picking easy numbers for math purposes, $18,000, because that's 10 people. Construction equipment operator, we would do 5, so that's $9,000. General automotive services tax, we really need and want to encourage people to go into that, let's say. So on that one, we'll do $36,000. You see what I'm saying? It kind of provides some direction if you want to go that way. It's going to require a lot of oversight, a lot of thought. We are going to have to have on record kind of why we're doing certain things and not doing other certain things.
And we haven't had this crop up in demand occupation until the cosmetology thing arose. So, I mean, I don't know how you approach that, but it's run pretty well, pretty fairly across demand occupations in our region, and we have never had this. And now all of a sudden we're being faced with a demand occupation that's going to take a whole ton of money unless you figure out how to rein it in, and again rein it in that you can manage. That you can say, I'm not doing it just against this one, but we've got to be able to say, I think you'd do the same thing if you had somebody that was taking advantage of a demand occupation and wanting to train 50 people. You know, you got to have some way to level that off.
Doesn't the committee have say-so on who they approve and don't approve? It seems like at different times over the years, if we needed machinists, we would try to focus on that and approve more people and more of a, like Jim's saying, more of a demand occupation that's and more of a demand at the time.
Right.
We would manage that by kind of, so the demand list was the demand list. What we would do is say, you know, we're getting a lot of pressure. You know, George Miner over in Chemung County is screaming that he's got 5 different companies that all want machinists, and so he would bring that to exec, and we would kind of flow that down to the staff and say, okay, we have this huge push, business input. We need to advertise. Tim, do you have any ability to ramp up machinists? Jeannie at the college, do you have any ability to ramp up machinists? We're going to put a marketing push on there. We really want to do this, and that's kind of how we would manage it in the past. The difference between past is Jim's right. We've never really had this problem before, and you're right. We've kind of always been able to respond by where we market and where we push that way. All right. The difference here is you have a training provider. Anything wrong? I want to be painfully clear on that. What they've said is, holy cow, here's a funding stream. Right. I'm a for-profit entity, and you know what? The more people I get into my program, the more money I make, and therefore, all staff, all points bulletin, everybody gets referred. You march them over there. If they're in this queue, you're now responsible to make sure, to the extent possible, they get we owe them money, because this is going to now be our bread and butter, and we're going to make a lot of money on this.
So Dan,
yeah.
what you just described is the exact experience that I had in the early days of this program. I'm going back to the
Yep.
90s and the early 2000s. That's exactly what happened. And all of a sudden, our policies at a board level set it up in such a way that there was no way for us to say no.
Correct. As long as you have this as a demand occupation, fundable with WIOA money,
Mm-hmm.
because they're not doing anything wrong.
Yep.
It is. We've said to the world, this is a demand occupation. We've said to the world, we'll give you up to $7,000 per person plus supportive services. We need these people. That's what we've said to the world. Now we've got a training provider, a company out there that said, line them up, Sally. We're going to make a lot of money. So there's nothing wrong. The only thing wrong now is, as a board, whoa, we're putting a lot of money because these guys have it figured out. We're putting, is this what we want?
But can't the board make independent decisions when you see that that's ramping up and it's getting out of control? Doesn't the board have the ability to say, okay, we're gonna have to cap this because it is affecting our overall programs, and we're gonna be ultimately they're gonna be taking, look at the worst case scenario. They could suck up all your money, then you don't have any money to train a machinist, So I think that the board needs to be able to say, hey, wait a minute, whoa, that's enough.
Yeah.
It's enough. The board has said that that's good. We've helped them out. We've got this far. We're going to put a moratorium on it for 6 months or a year to let it simmer down, see how it works out, and keep our money so that we can use it for other demand occupation. I'm just afraid you're going to wind up with most of your money going to somebody that's figured out the way to use it.
Yeah, I will tell you, because I have been down this road. And I'm sure human nature hasn't changed. And I will tell you that it was, and if you remember when I first joined the board, I talked about this, about how we really probably didn't want to go down this path. Because once they're used to it, they will use their political, you're shutting off their funding stream, and they will scream and it will be ugly. I'm just having been, and we did in fact change up our demand occupations and took them out, but we had to take action to do that. And it was, small environment, kind of like what we have here. So it becomes an issue. I'm sorry.
No, Judy, finish. I thought you were done. I'm sorry. I saw you lean back and thought you were done.
Well, I was just going to say, I think we had such a demand at that point for other occupational training that we literally just sort of shut off the massage and the cosmetology. And those were the two. I remember it distinctly. Those were the two. They figured it out. And we just denied it and just said no. And it was very, very politically charged to do that.
I would say that the bluntest tool is to just say cosmetology, whatever that 59 dash, whatever that category, it is in demand, but we're just not going to put any money behind it. And that is historically where Tim has a cosmetology program. We used to giggle at one point in time, kind of back and forth saying, yeah, we know there's jobs out there, but we can't open that spigot, and we didn't do it. And Tim's program, I'm sure he was taking heat from his higher ups to open that spigot, but for the longest time we weren't. So the bluntest, cleanest tool is just to say, yes, acknowledge it's a demand occupation, but it's not an occupation we're willing to put money behind right now, and just take it off that fundable list. That is the cleanest, whatever. If you want to try and massage limitations and stuff, then we have to do it, but we're going to have to do it in such a way that we don't look like we're being, favoring anybody or whatever. So in this case, probably the cleanest from a risk liability perspective also happens to be using the bluntest tool, which is to just say, we're not funding these anymore.
Motion to approve.
I didn't hear a motion in there, but So that's really the conversation. We have had a moratorium, but again, their machine is ramped up. They continue to submit applications on it because they're praying there, and there will be squeak. If we take it off, there will be squeak, and there will be pain because, you know, the BOCES programs won't be able to do it, and you know, the youth program coming out, we will have, if the youth want to continue playing that role in that pipeline of development, then the youth program is going to have to look at their policies to see if they can meet that and whatnot.
So Dan, one option, I don't know, maybe this has been discussed and I was, you know, having an out of body experience or something. But the other option is that we sort of put some sort of a general criteria that we're looking for career ladder, that we want to do training that has a career ladder attached to it. And
well,
now
the response would be, well, that's absolutely, they can come in as a basic hairstylist, then they can become a nail tech, then they can become.
Oh, is that how they'll do it? But I thought that was
yeah.
entry.
Yeah. And the more of these skills that you get, the more, I don't mean to sound jaded. I really, please don't take it that way or I'm being negative. It's just, if I can think of that, they'll think of that too. They're smarter than me.
All right, so I'll make the motion. I'll make the motion that we acknowledge that this program isn't in demand, but that we will not be funding it with WIOA funds. Is that?
So basically, we'd be removing it as a level 2 fundable program, but maintaining the acknowledgement that it is a demand occupation. Therefore, if places like the BOCES or the college or even this place, they find a grant opportunity under the ARC money to do this,
yep,
we're not a barrier to them. We're just not putting our local monies into it.
Yeah,
I think
I'm good with that.
I'm good with that too. Judy, you making that motion?
I am.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Any discussion on the topic?
Phyllis, how many applicants are we looking at right now?
There's just been requests. We are not moving forward with any applicants until we have some kind of decision. So we're not moving the process ahead. They kind of sat on the back burner until we can reach out to the barber school and like that with a message. Yeah.
Okay.
If this motion should pass when and if a vote is called on this, if it should pass, then what I will do is generate a letter which says, at this date, the board put a moratorium while it considered the demand occupation and fundability. At this meeting on the 5th, the board made a motion to do this. Therefore, we're not accepting these. And I'll kind of do it as a batch letter and I'll lay it out that way. If it passes, and I'm not saying that it will or won't, but that's kind of the action that I would be taking, Ernie, so that your team didn't have to, your team at the ITA review committee will not be in a position of saying no on this. It'll be coming from the board itself.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, we can't say no. Once we get the applicants on the table, we better have a damn good reason to deny it.
Correct.
And it's not because we don't think that we think that we're dumping too much money into this program. The applicant's there.
Yeah. Ernie, what are your thoughts on this? I'm kind of curious.
I think that this has gotten way out of hand and we've got to find a remedy to it, because even though it's not like at this point we're not able to fund other trainings, but I don't know where we are in our budget year as far as available funds. I mean, if we keep dumping money into this program and there is all of a sudden a glut of welders or something, some other demand occupation, and we don't have the funds for it. I mean, okay, we'll be the prettiest county in the state because we've got all these cosmetologists, but you can't build a building because there's no welders available.
Right. You're right, Ernie, and that's what I was worried about. You're gonna drain the swamp here with money going out in one direction, and then we don't have money to support demand occupations as they come up. I mean, we've got some projects coming up that are going to need some training, and not cosmetology training, but I think that I think it's the board's responsibility to maintain equilibrium in the way the training monies are used. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Nope. There isn't. I mean, you guys are, I mean, Judy's been down this road in a past life. So this is a well-worn conversation. It's gone back and forth. There's ebbs and flows. I will tell you down the road, if we find ourselves gagging on money, we may need to go back to them and say, hey, all right, now we'll let some money flow through because we've got an abundance. So as a board, we're going to kind of be going, considering whether we want to go back and forth.
Yeah, I agree.
But there are certain fields that when you open them up, be prepared, because you've now set the precedent and they will pump folks through that.
Okay.
We had a massage school start up not too long ago, up actually.
Oh, did you? There's the other one.
Well, it's in my world of not too long ago. At one point in time, there was a massage school that opened up, and they had their entire business plan. If you read they were a startup. Their business plan was to, we owe money, or we have money at the time.
That's it. In fact, I even remember the name. What's that tell you? I remember that it was Dawn, DAWN, Dawn Training. I remember it, and it was massage and cosmetology. Yep. And they were making their living off of it. It was amazing.
They were going to give discounts to board members, weren't they?
Well, the issue was the folks were, getting their certificates or getting trained, and then there was no job. They were without a job, and it was just horrible. It was just a terrible situation. And I think we did it because we had extra money. It was the right thing to do.
So my thought would be that in the future, if we do find ourselves money, what we do is, instead of putting them on demand occupation list, we create an addendum and say, for this funding stream, and as long as this funding stream lasts, we will invest as a level 3, blah, blah, blah. And that way you create that window to accommodate pools or chunks of money.
That makes sense.
Instead of just kind of the ongoing.
Yeah, I like that.
All right. Call for vote.
Call the vote? Yeah.
Yep, call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstained? Duly noted.
Just a comment, all the nail techs, a lot of the nail techs in our, I know 2 or 3 of them down here, organization, they're all coming out of Pittsburgh. The nail techs are, and they come up here, 3 or 4 of them at a time, and they all live together in one apartment, and they work horrendous hours. It's almost bothersome to see the work that they have to put in order to work for these people that are reaching out to bring them up here. It's enough said.
Yeah.
Yep.
Enough said. There's a reason why there's the state rules right now posted in Mandarin on the walls. That's all I'll say.
Hopefully it's in Korean, Vietnamese, Laotian, and Thai as well.
Well, that's true. That's a good point. So I don't want us to say Chinese, because you're right. A lot of Vietnamese.
Yeah, no, it is. Koreans, and then they're hard workers. They're nice people, and they're hard workers. They're being taken advantage of by the company, similar to these things that what we're talking about. I mean, I think you've done the right thing. I really do.
So I have a quick question, and that is, and it is related, tangentially, it's related. And that is, I think we really do. All I see now, all I'm hearing at this point is no one can find workers. I'm getting that call every day in little tiny Schuyler County. I'm getting it. And so my question, I think, is this a unique thing to Schuyler because we're tourism oriented? Everybody we've got help wanted signs in Tops. We have help wanted signs in CVS. These are retail. So these aren't necessarily skilled positions. But the question I guess I have is there something we can do to create a pipeline for some of these? First of all, do we even want to do it? That's the first question. Do we want to focus on retail? And then number 2, if we do, how do we as a board, or how do we as an organization? And we had a little bit of this conversation yesterday, broken up, of course, at our operations meeting. It was Phyllis, thank you. It was difficult because I was in a cell-free zone in Schuyler County. There was no cell service. So, but it just, I guess what I'm thinking is that we've got these openings, and then what is it that we can do at in our organization to either figure out a new way to approach this problem? And is it through training? I don't know.
Two things I think that's still working into it, and I had it yesterday in my own office. I had somebody come in looking for a job that's collecting unemployment, and I could use a part-time person. I can't hire a part-time person that's on unemployment because they get killed with their losing their unemployment. So as long as they keep extending the unemployment and the benefits and the you're going to have that. I mean, we got Ernie knows and everybody knows Alstom's trying to hire 30 machinists down there. I mean, and Dan's run I don't know how many programs to entice people to come. So there's people out there that need to work, but they don't need to work now because they're happy.
Jim, how I guess my question is, how much are they paying for these machinists?
Well, the machinists are $15, $18 an hour. I sat down with a young lady yesterday to talk about part-time in my office. In order to 2 days, she would lose 2 days of unemployment, and in order to pay her what she would lose, I mean, I would have to pay her $25 an hour for part-time in order to just match up with what she's getting without having to go to work. You know, it's a tough one.
And that's just the immediate impact, Jim, just so you know. When she's collecting unemployment and then she's getting access to health insurance and other benefits through other programs, once your income from that part-time job gets recorded, now she's facing what's called the benefit cliff. Now she won't qualify for the Medicaid, the child care assistance, the HEAP assistance, the medical assistance. So really, I mean, I guess permission to speak perhaps a little bit brutally, I guess. Realistically on this, you know, unemployment insurance is a double-edged sword. It provides an absolutely critical resource to somebody who's just lost their job and a lifeline to transition.
Sure.
You'll never hear me say anything bad about that. The challenge is when you do get either the extra 600, the extra 300, the general extended benefits, when you automatically use unemployment levels to then pre-qualify for other assistance programs, now you've created a bit of support / whatever that can lead to some level of dependency. The best motivator for a job is a hungry belly, and that sounds horrible. I cringe when I say that, but that's true. You've got to get an individual to where they're hungry, and then whether that's metaphorical or whether that's literal, you've got to get them hungry for that job, and that's hard. And hungry for the job. I mean, the places struggling right now. I'm just going to throw this out there, and I'm all about anybody who knows me outside of work and even to work. I'm all about personal responsibility. Work is better than no work and all those fun things. But the value proposition, what's my value proposition to work 12 hours a week at the local dandy mini mart and risk myself getting COVID potentially or not? What's the value proposition for me? I've got to be at the inconvenience. I got to get my mom to watch the kids, even if it's free childcare, let alone paid. What's the value proposition? What's the value proposition? And you know, I'll even use the Alstom thing, and we're busting our buns to try and help Alstom to the extent we can fill their slots. But what's the value proposition? You're going to pay me $12.91 an hour, 81 or whatever the starting out. And yeah, in 90 days I'll get $1 more, and I understand that. But what's the value proposition to that worker? And I think employers have some level of responsibility in here in terms of wages and benefit packages to help overcome that.
Well,
You're right.
I think the key here is, I mean, to be honest, I didn't realize it was that low. Jim, don't take offense what I just said, but you know, someone coming in as a machinist, $15 an hour, I can make that wait in a table, right? Yes. So I guess
not be drug tested.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So my point of saying that is that it's okay to start someone low. I mean, I believe in that. I believe you start someone at a lower per hour rate. I mean, that's what I'm doing right now with a couple of folks. You start them lower to sort of see how they're going to work out, and then you create a career ladder. I really think That's the key. And I think that's what Alstom probably needs to do is say, yeah, we're going to start you at $15 or $16 an hour. But if you are successful, here is what our strategy is to reward you. You go through training, right? We're going to get you through training. You get through training, and you're operating at whatever their prescribed level is. You're going to jump to this level, and then as you uses their performance, after 6 months, we're going to take you higher. That is that. When I worked the line, I used to work lots of manufacturing jobs in college. That was what did it. It wasn't the entry level. It was that you knew that within a year you were going to be making okay money, and then 2 years, if you're there 2 years, you're at you're making a lot. So that's my question.
They have the progression. I mean, starting and then progression, like you say, and I'm not saying that all these companies, and they're all pretty much the same in our area, that are competing for these same jobs. They're all about the same level, and I'm not saying that they don't need to come up because of what's happening in the country right now. So, so you're I agree with you, Judy. There's nobody on here from Alstom, is there?
No, but I think I use Alstom because there are as far as I'm concerned, I actually had just earlier this week with somebody in Albany where I said, look, Alstom is our gravy train. No one's recognizing it, but it is. It's our gravy train for the Southern Tier. It really could be if we were to really rally behind it and bring in all the subcontractors and everybody else that's attached to it. The challenge is that we're still, I think I'm guilty of this, I'm comfortable, I'm happy here, it's Happy Valley, but quite frankly, the difficulty we have is we don't have people. Like, we have to figure out whether we do that through, it's a great opportunity, it's a career ladder, we pay more, it's quality of life. We have got to figure out how to attract workers, because we're not growing them. We're just not. We have to attract them. And that's why I was asking how much they were paying, because if they're paying enough, we could literally go put a billboard in Erie, Pennsylvania. Sure. And I would,
Look, they have a recruiting firm that works for them, Systems One, and they recruit from all over. They're actually out of Pittsburgh, and they do recruiting for. And I mean, we're talking entry level jobs, but they also do recruiting for higher level staff jobs and so on. So,
well, Jim, whatever we can do to help, I guess, is where I am. I just think that, this is it's a record that keeps just replaying over and over again, and sooner or later they're going to say we're going where, we're going to keep our suppliers where they are because they have labor. And
they just brought a family over here from Poland to work, and I'm sure they're paying them well, because it's a husband and wife and a 2-year-old child, and they rented a house that I owned, and so God bless them. I hope they're here for a while.
Yeah, but I think Jim, I would be asking the question, what's their retention rate? Right? That to me is the key. If they're just bringing them in and they're here for a year or 18 months or even 2 years and then they're gone, that's not a good solution long term.
But in the rail sector, though, the retention rate is really based to the project need. So if bringing in this person, this couple from Poland, and I don't know anything about it, Jim. I'm speaking out my butt. Tell me, but I mean, if they were brought in on this, they probably have a specific skill set. If that is related to a current contract, when that contract is up, that skill set is no longer needed. They are going to go somewhere else. So unless Alstom continues selling that particular contract, or that style of manufacturing expertise that requires that, then it's stuck there. The rail cars industry, I worked at System One for 3 years. I recruited specifically for Alstom, for Bombardier, for CAF, for Hitachi. I mean, I did this, and that was trying to measure some of these things. You've got the industry needs them when they need them for as long as they need them, and then they need to, it's kind of like oil and gas too.
So why how come and I'm just asking this, and maybe we should take this offline, but I'm just kind of curious about what is it about their skill set that we can't figure out how to fit them in somewhere else in the southern tier or in the region? Are they that specific in the transportation industry that they're not transferable skills?
Unfortunately, of the transportation business, and Dan struck on it, can be very cyclical. You have a contract right now for the Acela train, last 2 more years. They'll be hiring a lot of people in the next year to actually build the remainder of the cars. And then when that contract's over, those 29 train sets are built. That's it. I mean, there is not a contract following on. They're working on it. We're hoping and praying that they get a contract that we're looking for. But in this day and age, all you got to do is pick up the paper, find out about the MTA. Doesn't have any money down there. They're going to need cars. Their cars are falling apart. Haven't got any money. So we're in a tough situation all across the country, transportation wise. So it's a tough one. It's long term, Judy, and you're right. Long term is not in the conversations on a lot of these jobs.
In the industry, they call it the bathtub. And if you talk to their HR departments, Jim's heard this countless times. You know, they have their projections of staffings, they overlay pretty colors, and there's ebb and flow of projects and all that fun stuff on that. And inevitably, every single rail company I've ever worked with, and that's not the encompassing whole world, but it's Hitachi, Insaldo Breda, Bombardier, Alstom, CAF. So in my interface with those, they all have these bathtubs. So the contracts will get to this point, and there will be a time when that will go down, and then it will be down for a while, and then they'll get contracts and they'll begin building it back up out of that bathtub. It's the nature. But going to the specific skill sets, if you are a propulsion engineer, you are excruciatingly painfully valuable to the well, pick up whatever. But if you're a propulsion engineer and there's no contracts for propulsion systems in the US, you may very well go to Brazil because Brazil's ramping up. And then you may go to China because China's ramping up. And then you may go back to Paris because Siemens got a contract. And it's just, it's a fun world, but it's a scary world. Having been in there for a little bit, it's crazy.
A lot of these skills are transferable. I mean, for years when Alstom would have a contract, then they'd go down. Then somebody, CAF or somebody would go up, and our people would move. They didn't physically move to another location. They drove to work from Hornell to Elmira, or they went from Elmira to Hornell or over to Wellsville. So we have a pretty mobile labor force, and it ebbs and flows. Right now, it's up right now. So who knows?
And there's been creative other solutions in the past too. I remember when TTA was literally paying for a bus and housing. They would take Hornell Alstom workers, put them on a bus, drive them down to Philadelphia on Monday. They'd work all week, and on Friday they'd load them on a bus and bring them back.
Bring them back. I know. I know.
So it's just finding who's producing right now, and is your skill set aligned with them right now? It's a puzzle.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm not going to beat this to death. For me, it's very helpful. What I really appreciate about it is that you've opened my eyes to how much I really don't know about the transportation industry.
Judy,
so I appreciate that.
Judy, stop picking on me.
Just give them all a barbering license.
There you go.
Way to go, Ernie.
All right. So motion to adjourn. Anyone?
Oh, motion. Yes. Motion to adjourn.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right. Thanks you, everybody. I really appreciate the conversation this morning. I've got, just so the exec committee knows, I've got a personal family emergency I'm dealing with a little bit. So I'm kind of trying to stay on top of some projects. I'm in and out. Hopefully in the next week, it'll kind of move past to where my life is a little more settled, but I'm kind of dealing with some of that stuff right now. So I apologize if I feel like a little scattered.
No, that's okay. And Dan, just so you know, I'm sure Phyllis told you, we're going to schedule for the a subset of the operations committee to start to work on the RFP for next year.
I hadn't heard that yet, but that's good news.
doing. So, all
After
right.
this meeting, Dan, you'll hear it.
You'll
After
hear
this one?
more about it. It was a really difficult meeting, but it's all good now. And so I hope everything it works out okay with your family.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Take
Bye.
care all.